Craig Melvin has spent decades learning how to look straight into a camera while the world trembles just out of frame. And in unsettled times, he often thinks about how the headlines don't simply report life, they seep into it, settling quietly into kitchens, living rooms, and the hearts of people who remember a slower, steadier America. One where news arrived with the morning paper and a cup of coffee rather than a buzz in the pocket. And yet, even now, it's crises stack upon crises. Craig believes the task is not to amplify fear, but to steady the moment. A philosophy he refined not in newsrooms alone, but at home with his wife, Lindsay Czarniak, whose own career in broadcasting taught her that poise is not the absence of emotion, but the discipline of carrying it with care. Late at night, after the children are asleep and the house finally exhales, they talk not about ratings or viral clips, but about what it means to age into wisdom rather than cynicism, about how people in their 60s, the viewers who raised families, endured recessions, watched leaders rise and fall, aren't looking for panic dressed as urgency, but for context, humility, and a reminder that history bends, slowly, toward renewal if we stay engaged without becoming consumed. Craig remembers watching veterans of the craft when he was young, anchors who spoke with calm authority during assassinations, wars, and cultural upheavals, and he understands now that what stayed with viewers wasn't the perfection of their delivery, but the sense that someone was standing watch, someone steady enough to say, "You're not alone in this." And that belief shapes how he approaches every broadcast, especially when the news feels relentless, because he knows many in his audience have already carried heavy burdens: illness, loss, retirement anxieties, the quiet shock of realizing time moves faster than it once did. And they don't need to be told the world is broken, they need to be shown how people endure. Lindsay often reminds him that perspective is an act of love, that choosing what not to say can be as important as choosing what to say. And together, they've built a household where the news stops at the dinner table, where laughter and routine push back against the constant churn, a practice Craig now sees as essential not only for his family, but for his viewers, many of whom are learning how to protect their peace without disengaging from civic life. In moments of doubt, Craig thinks about Hoda Kotb's quiet insistence that joy is not naive, that it can coexist with sorrow without diminishing its seriousness, and he translates that into his own philosophy. Acknowledge the darkness, yes, but don't let it eclipse the light people need to keep going, especially those who have lived long enough to know that fear ages you faster than time. He speaks differently now than he did at 30, less eager to fill every second, more comfortable with pauses that let meaning breathe, because he understands that the older audience he serves has earned the right to reflection, having lived through eras when the country felt just as divided, just as uncertain, and yet endured. Craig and Lindsay talk about legacy, not the kind measured in awards, but the quieter legacy of trust, about what it means to show up consistently, honestly, and with empathy, even when the story of the day is ugly, because trust, once broken, is hard to restore. And for many viewers in their 60s, trust has already been tested by institutions that promised stability and delivered chaos. So Craig chooses steadiness over spectacle, connection over commentary, believing that his role is not to tell people how to feel, but to help them feel less alone in feeling what they already feel. And in doing so, he finds a strange comfort himself, a sense that amid the noise, purpose still exists. When the broadcast ends and the lights dim, he carries those faces with him: the retired teacher, the widower, the grandmother watching from a quiet house. And he knows that navigating the headlines isn't just about making sense of the world, it's about honoring the lives that have already weathered so much, offering them not certainty, which no one can promise, but companionship, clarity, and the reassurance that even in unsettling times, there is dignity in staying informed, grace in staying human, and hope in choosing, day after day, to look forward without forgetting how far we've already come.